It's become fairly common for Ubisoft developers to be judged and be griefed by gamers who believe that they are at fault for the dip in quality that's arguably afflicted the company in recent years. Many gamers who believe that Ubisoft is a bad company blame the developers when not actually looking into what's really going on with Ubisoft and why it's struggling at the moment to make games that get good reviews, as mixed reviews have become quite common when it comes to Ubisoft titles. In this video, I'm going to explain why I think that the Ubisoft developers deserve more credit. In order to do this, we need to highlight the real problem with Ubisoft. Now, I am completely convinced that the developers who actually work on the games drip their very souls into making the games as good as they can possibly be. However, they still somehow end up with mixed reviews, especially in recent years. If we wind back a few years, this used to not be the case, and like every company, they'd have their ups, and obviously they'd have their downs, because not every game a company's going to make can be perfect. The problem really spawns from the higher ups who want to get games out so that they can turn a profit. This is understandable given Ubisoft's position with Vivendi trying to stage a hostile takeover, which I do believe has been looming over the company for a good few years now, however I'm not sure. And also because Ubisoft is a business and they're trying to make money here. That's the point. When people say, oh, this game is just for money, well, obviously, why else would you make it if it wasn't going to turn a profit? The higher ups in the company, such as the CEO, Yves Guillemot, they're businessmen and women. What they aren't is dedicated to making games per se, but instead making money, which is perfectly fine and understandable. Every company is like this, I'm sure. This isn't what people would claim to be a scummy thing, this is just how it works, that's what it's about. But when it comes to making games, it doesn't really work to try to rush as many products as you can, because that's going to hinder the quality very badly. Now, as far as the developers are concerned, they want to make games. They are passionate about it, I am sure. However, the company is set in the direction of making as many games as possible with short development periods, which results in somewhat limited resources by comparison to how it could be, as well as that daunting time limit, which would surely leave most Ubisoft developers into overworking themselves. Because as developers, they're just working, they're trying to do the job, but the people who are higher up would rather make many games each year than maybe 2 or 3 that are really high quality, or maybe not even that. Ubisoft's higher up and leaders are the real reason why Ubisoft is treading down the path that it's going at the moment, which a lot of gamers have found discontent with. But when the game comes out and people are like, oh, that's just another Ubisoft game, it's the same story as the last one, I don't ever see the CEO or anybody up there get stick, but instead I see people saying things like, the Ubisoft developers are handicapped. Which is not the case, as they're good at making games. The problem is that they're being made to work so much on so many projects, spread so thin, with daunting deadlines, and as a result there's only so much that they can do. And honestly, I'm surprised that Ubisoft game quality isn't worse than it is. Because as far as games are concerned, Ubisoft quality has never been below a certain standard, but it could be better, which a lot of people have realised. And I've seen people take it upon themselves to give grief to the developers and the people working at Ubisoft for things that are really out of their control. Now, I don't have a soul, but if I did, and I put it into a game being overworked with a daunting deadline and it got mixed reviews, but that's nothing that I could have done about it, and people are giving me stick left, right and centre, God, it must feel like shit. Now, whichever way you cut it, a lot of gamers have noticed that they feel as if Ubisoft games are losing their thunder, and believe me, I am one of those people. But too many people are blaming this on the developers who, I get that their ideas might sometimes not be what fans want, but they do want to make the game as good as it can possibly be. But I don't really see many people taking it up with the people who are leading the company down the path it's going down, the people who want this to be how it is, people like Yves Guillemot. I'm not saying he doesn't care about the quality of the games that his company makes, because he probably does, but I get the vibe that he feels as if Ubisoft is a company that makes things that are a little bit easier to do than a game, and as a result don't need as much time and care, when in reality that's not the case. Game developers are called game developers for a reason. They develop the game. They don't just make the game. You can't do that. They're not game makers, which don't exist because you have to develop the game. And having small development cycles is not really going to help. Forcing the development period is just going to give us a result that's not going to live up to what people expected. The company needs to be treated more as a game developing company, a company that takes their time to do things and develop the game as opposed to just making it. But hopefully this issue will be a thing of the past. Back in 2016, Ubisoft made a statement saying that they would not be making an Assassin's Creed in 2016, and instead they will focus on trying to get Assassin's Creed, whatever it is going to be called, ready for the year after. However, so far this year we've heard nothing, and what we have heard is that they will talk about it when ready, as opposed to having a set time to talk about it. So this means maybe this Ubisoft time constraint business will be a thing of the past. However, what doesn't seem to be a thing of the past is the ridiculous amount of games that Ubisoft are making. I'm sure if Ubisoft were able to dedicate their time and resources into 2 or 3 big projects each year, then surely they would have better results all around, which would probably result in better sales. Now, say one of these projects is an actual blockbuster of a game that gets loads of sales and everybody's buying it, then surely that's going to bring in more money than 3 or 4 mediocre games that could have been in its stead in Ubisoft's current approach to releasing games. I can't guarantee this, but it's more than likely what would happen, hypothetically speaking. So when a lot of gamers look on Ubisoft products with disdain, that's not necessarily the fault of the developers who have tried their hardest to make the game as good as it can possibly be, considering the circumstances, and considering how stretched thin and forced to try to hit irrational deadlines. They're doing fairly well with what they've got, and deserve more credit. And with a little bit more understanding and lenience from the higher-ups in the company, like the CEO, they could end up making amazing games once again that every gamer will love, or at least give a chance. However, like I said earlier, with Assassin's Creed, they've sort of sacked the yearly release cycle and they've gone for when it's ready as opposed to a certain deadline, which is good and all, but if they were to substitute making loads of games for making a couple that were really good, then I think that they would probably end up with a better quality of game, better sales, and the company would just improve in general. However, for what actually happens, we'll just have to wait and see.